"Get out!" the billionaire yelled, his face turning red. "You're just a waitress. What could you possibly know about high-stakes history?" The room went silent. Security moved in to drag her away. She had one chance. Sarah looked Sheikh Karim in the eye and spoke, not in English, but in flawless, classical Arabic. The color drained from the scammer's face. That single sentence didn't just save the Sheikh $200 million, it exposed a conspiracy that went all the way to the British aristocracy. But no one prepared Sarah for the target that was about to be painted on her back. The air inside the private penthouse suite at the Plaza Hotel didn't smell like air. It smelled like old money, Davidoff cigars, and the kind of leather that cost more than Sarah Jenkins' entire college tuition. Sarah adjusted the collar of her stiff, black uniform. Her feet were throbbing. She had been standing for 6 hours straight, holding a silver tray of crystal water glasses, trying to make herself invisible. That was the first rule of working the VIP circuit in New York City. Be a ghost. If the guests noticed you, you failed. If you spilled something, you were fired. If you spoke without being spoken to, you were destroyed. More scotch. Now. The voice belonged to Arthur Harrington. Sarah didn't look him in the eye, another rule, but she knew exactly what he looked like. He was a man who wore his arrogance like a second skin. Dressed in a bespoke Savile Row suit that likely cost $40,000, Arthur was the definition of Western corporate power. He was a broker of rare antiquities, a man who claimed to find things that didn't want to be found. "Right away, sir," Sarah whispered, moving with the silent efficiency of a shadow. She poured the amber liquid into his glass, careful not to let the crystal decanter touch the rim. Her hand was steady, but her heart was hammering against her ribs. She wasn't just tired, she was terrified. Her rent was 3 months overdue. Her landlord, a man named Mr. Kowalski, who smelled permanently of boiled cabbage, had given her until Friday to pay up or get out. Friday was tomorrow. If she lost this shift, she was on the street. It was that simple. Sarah was 24, with messy brown hair she kept pinned back tight, and eyes that had seen too much disappointment for someone so young. She wasn't supposed to be a waitress. 2 years ago, she was a doctoral candidate in Near Eastern languages and civilizations at Columbia University. She was brilliant. She could read scripts that hadn't been spoken in 1,000 years. She could distinguish between an Omani dialect and a Yemeni dialect just by the inflection of a vowel. But brilliance doesn't pay for chemotherapy. When her mother got sick, the scholarship money wasn't enough. The tuition vanished into hospital bills. The degree was put on hold, then abandoned. Now, the girl who could translate the poetry of Rumi was serving scotch to men who thought culture was something you bought to hang on a wall. "He's 5 minutes out," a security guard murmured into his earpiece by the door. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Arthur Harrington stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked at the other man in the room, a nervous, sweating academic named Dr. Silas Reed. "Pull yourself together, Silas," Arthur hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "We are 5 yards from the goal line. Do not fumble the ball." I know," Silas stammered, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "It's just the amount, Arthur. 200 million. If he finds out, he won't find out," Arthur snapped, "because you are the expert. You are the renowned Dr. Reed from Oxford. Your word is God to him. And if you want to pay off those gambling debts in Macau, you will sell this lie with a smile." Sarah, standing in the corner near a potted fern, felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but in a room this quiet, silence was a conductor. A lie? She gripped her serving tray tighter. Don't get involved, she told herself. You need this tip. You need this job. Just pour the water. The heavy mahogany double doors swung open. His Highness, Sheikh Karim Al-Fayed, the guard announced. Sarah watched as the sheikh entered. He was younger than she expected, perhaps in his late 30s. He didn't wear traditional robes. Instead, he wore a sharp, modern navy suit, no tie. But he carried an aura of royalty that clothes couldn't manufacture. He was flanked by 2 massive bodyguards who scanned the room with predatory eyes. Sheikh Karim was known in the financial columns as the Lion of Investment. He wasn't just oil-rich, he was smart. He owned tech companies in Silicon Valley, real estate in London, and shipping lines in Singapore. But everyone knew his weakness, his heritage. He was obsessed with reclaiming the lost history of his ancestors. Arthur Harrington spread his arms wide, a shark smiling at a seal. Your Highness, welcome. It is an honor to host you. Mr. Harrington, the sheikh said, his voice deep and accented, but his English perfect. He shook Arthur's hand briefly, his expression unreadable. You told me on the phone that you have found the lost light. That is a very bold claim. I don't make claims, Your Highness, Arthur said smoothly, gesturing to the velvet-covered table in the center of the room. I deliver miracles. Please, sit. Sarah moved forward to pour water for the sheikh. As she approached, the sheikh's bodyguard stepped in her path, his hand raised. The sheikh waved him off gently. It is fine, Karim said. He glanced at Sarah. For a second, their eyes met. He didn't look through her like Arthur did. He looked at her, giving a polite, barely noticeable nod of thanks as she filled his glass. Thank you, he said softly. You're welcome, sir, Sarah whispered, backing away into the shadows again. Arthur wasted no time. He signaled to Dr. Reed. Silas, if you would do the honors. Dr. Reed, hands trembling slightly, put on a pair of white cotton gloves. He approached the table and slowly, dramatically, pulled back the velvet cloth. Underneath lay a wooden chest, intricately carved. Reed opened it and lifted out a book. It wasn't just a book. It was a manuscript bound in cracked ancient leather, the pages yellowed with the weight of centuries. Your Highness, Arthur said, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper, I present to you the Al-Andalus Treaty of 1248, the only known signed agreement between the Sultan of Granada and the Crown of Castile, securing the safety of the Great Library's archives before the city fell. It contains the signatures of the scholars who saved the knowledge of the ancients. The sheikh leaned forward, his eyes widening. This wasn't just paper, it was the holy grail of his collection. If this was real, it proved that his ancestors had valued knowledge above land, even in the face of defeat. $200 million, Arthur said, naming the price as if he were discussing the weather. A bargain for the soul of history. Sarah watched from her corner. She squinted at the book. She was too far away to read the text, but something about the situation made her stomach turn. The sweating professor, the aggressive salesman, the desperate need for the money. She felt a strange pull, a curiosity she thought she had buried along with her mother. She needed to see those pages. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Sheikh Karim stood up and walked toward the manuscript. He didn't touch it. He had too much respect for the artifact. He simply hovered over it, his eyes scanning the calligraphy. It is magnificent, Karim whispered. The calligraphy is Thuluth script, from the Nasrid dynasty. Precisely, Dr. Reed said, finding his confidence now that the script was in front of him. He pointed to a section of the text. Notice the curvature of the olive here. It is distinct to the royal scribes of Granada in the mid-13th century, and the ink, we have carbon-dated the vellum. It is authentically from the 1240s. The sheikh nodded slowly. And the provenance? Found in a private collection in Toledo, Spain, Arthur interjected smoothly. Hidden in a basement vault of a duke's estate for 600 years. The family didn't know what they had until I persuaded them to let me have it appraised. Sarah shifted her weight. Her legs were burning, but her mind was racing. Toledo? The timeline fit. The history fit. I have the wire transfer ready, the sheikh said, turning to his assistant, a man named Omar who stood by the door with a tablet. 200 million USD. Excellent decision, Arthur said, trying to hide the greed in his eyes. This will be the centerpiece of the National Museum. Wait, the sheikh said. I wish to read the opening prayer. It is said that the Sultan wrote the preamble himself. Of course, Arthur said, though his smile tightened. Dr. Reed, please turn the page. Dr. Reed carefully turned the fragile page to the introduction. The calligraphy was large, bold, and sweeping. The black ink contrasted sharply with the gold leaf bordering. Sarah took a step forward. She couldn't help it. She was technically refilling Arthur's Scotch glass, which brought her within 3 feet of the table. She glanced down at the open page, her brain, trained for years in the dusty basements of libraries, kicked into gear automatically. She read the Arabic text. It was beautiful. It was poetic. Bismillah ir-Rahman ir-Rahim. It flowed perfectly. It spoke of peace, of the burden of command, of the sorrow of losing land. And then her eyes caught a word in the 3rd line. Her hand froze mid-pour. A tiny drop of scotch splashed onto the polished table. Arthur whipped his head around. "You clumsy idiot," he hissed, his voice shattering the reverence of the moment. Sarah flinched. I'm so sorry, sir." "Get out," Arthur snarled. "Get out of my sight. You're ruining the moment." She stepped back, grabbing her tray. She should leave. She should run. This man was about to close a $200 million deal, and she was just the help. But she looked at the sheikh. He was looking at the manuscript with such love, such pride. He was about to be robbed. He was about to be humiliated on a global stage. If he bought a fake, he wouldn't just lose money. He would lose face. His reputation as a scholar prince would be destroyed. And Sarah knew it was a fake. She knew it because of one single word. She stopped moving toward the door. Her heart was beating so hard she thought she might pass out. "Don't do it, Sarah. You have $40 in your bank account. You need this job." But then she thought of her father, who had taught her that history was the only truth we have left. To fake it was a sin. She turned around. "It's a fake," she said. Her voice was quiet, trembling, but in the silent room, it sounded like a gunshot. Arthur froze. The sheikh froze. Dr. Reed looked like he was about to vomit. Arthur turned slowly, his face a mask of pure rage. "What did you say?" Sarah gripped her tray until her knuckles turned white. "I said, the book. It's a fake. It's a forgery." Arthur let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "Excuse me? You are a waitress. Do you even know what century this is from? Get security in here. Remove this trash." 2 security guards stepped forward, grabbing Sarah by the arms. "Wait," Sheikh Karim said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. He held up a hand. The guards stopped, but didn't let go of Sarah. The sheikh looked at her. "That is a very dangerous accusation to make, miss." "Sarah," she gasped. "My name is Sarah." "Miss Sarah," the sheikh continued, stepping closer to her. "Mr. Harrington is one of the most respected antiquities dealers in the world. Dr. Reed is a tenured professor. And you are serving drinks. Why should I listen to you?" "Because they are lying to you," Sarah said, finding her voice. The fear was still there, but the anger was rising now. Anger at men like Arthur, who thought money made them untouchable. "Listen to me," Arthur shouted, his face red. "She's probably drunk or looking for a payout. Get her out of here before I call the police." "I said wait!" the Sheikh roared, silencing Arthur instantly. He turned back to Sarah. "You have 30 seconds. Tell me why it is a fake." "The third line," Sarah said, her breath hitching. "The preamble. It uses the word istiklal for independence." Arthur rolled his eyes. "So? It's a treaty. It talks about independence." "No," Sarah said, shaking her head. "In modern Arabic, istiklal means independence, political independence, like a nation-state." She looked directly at the Sheikh now, switching languages. "Ya Sayyidi, fi al-Qarn al-Thalith Ashar." Sir, in the 13th century. The Sheikh's eyes widened. She was speaking Arabic. And not just street Arabic. She was speaking the formal, classical dialect of the scholars. The concept of istiklal as political sovereignty didn't exist in that form, Sarah continued in English for the benefit of the room, though her eyes stayed on Karim. In 1248, the Sultan would have used the word hurriya, or referred to the ummah. The word istiklal wasn't used to describe state sovereignty until the Ottoman reforms in the 19th century. Whoever wrote this manuscript used a modern vocabulary. Silence. Absolute, dead silence. Arthur looked at Dr. Reed. "Is that true?" Dr. Reed was sweating so profusely now that drops were hitting his collar. Well, language is fluid. Interpretations vary. "It's not an interpretation," Sarah said firmly. "It's an anachronism. It's like finding a letter from George Washington that uses the word internet. It's impossible." Arthur lunged toward her. "You little witch! You're sabotaging me!" He raised his hand as if to strike her. The Sheikh didn't move, but his bodyguard did. In a blur of motion, the massive guard intercepted Arthur's arm, twisting it behind his back. Arthur yelped in pain. "Do not touch her," the Sheikh said, his voice ice cold. He walked back to the manuscript. He looked at the third line. He wasn't a linguist, but he knew enough. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Who are you calling?" Arthur cried out, pinned by the guard. "The curator of the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul," Karim said. "He is a friend. I will ask him about the etymology of the word istiklal." He put the phone on speaker. The room waited. A voice answered. "Karim, to what do I owe this pleasure?" "Ahmed," Karim said. "Quick question. In a diplomatic letter from 1248, Granada, would the Sultan use the word istiklal to demand independence?" A laugh crackled over the phone. "Karim, are you making a joke? Istiklal is a modern political term. In 1248? Impossible. He would be laughed out of court." "Why do you ask?" Karim hung up the phone. He turned slowly to Arthur Harrington and Dr. Reed. The look on his face was terrifying. It wasn't rage. It was the calm, devastating resolution of a man who had almost been played for a fool. $200 million, Karim whispered. "Your Highness, please," Arthur begged. "I didn't know. Reed, it was Reed. He authenticated it." I was forced," Reed squealed. "Arthur has my gambling debts. He said he'd kill me if I didn't verify it." "Enough," Karim said. He motioned to his security. "Call the NYPD and the FBI. This is fraud on an international level." The guards moved to restrain both men. Arthur was screaming threats, promising lawsuits, swearing he knew senators and judges. Sarah stood there, clutching her tray, her legs shaking uncontrollably. The adrenaline was crashing. She had just taken down a titan of the art world. The Sheikh walked over to her. The room was chaotic, with police sirens wailing in the distance below, but Karim seemed focused only on her. "What is your name again?" he asked. "Sarah. Sarah Jenkins." "Well, Sarah Jenkins," Karim said, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a card. "You have just saved me a fortune and my family's honor. You speak the language of poets. Why are you serving water in a hotel?" Sarah looked down at her shoes. I needed the money. I dropped out of my PhD program." Karim studied her face. "Not anymore," he said. "Get your coat." "Sir?" "You are fired from this hotel," Karim said with a small smile, "because you are hired by me. I have a lot of documents that need reviewing, and I seem to be short on honest experts." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Karim said. The police arrived in a swarm of blue uniforms. Arthur Harrington was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming that he would destroy everyone in the room. As he passed Sarah, he stopped struggling for a brief second. His eyes, cold and reptilian, locked onto hers. "You're dead," he mouthed. "You hear me? You're nothing. I will bury you." Then the elevator doors closed, and he was gone. Sarah shivered. She had seen angry customers before, but this was different. This was the hatred of a man who had just lost an empire. "Ignore him," Sheikh Karim said, noticing her fear. "He is a bully who has lost his teeth." Karim's assistants were already packing up the fake manuscript as evidence. The Sheikh turned to Sarah. "My driver will take you home. Tomorrow, come to my offices at the Hudson Yards. 10 Marta a.m. We will discuss your employment." "Thank you, Your Highness," Sarah said, feeling like she was in a dream. The ride home was surreal. She was used to taking the subway, squeezing between tired commuters and smelling stale coffee. Now she was in the back of a black Maybach with heated leather seats. The driver, a stoic man named Thomas, waited patiently while she awkwardly navigated the entry to her run-down apartment building in Queens. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her tiny studio. It was cold. She turned on the radiator, which clanked and hissed. She sat on her lumpy mattress and stared at the wall. Did that just happen? She checked her phone. She had a text from her landlord. "Money by noon tomorrow, or locks change." She smiled. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't afraid of that text. She had a job. A real job. But Sarah didn't know that the nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. Across town, in a holding cell at the 19th Precinct, Arthur Harrington was using his one phone call. He didn't call a lawyer. He called a number that wasn't listed in any directory. "It went bad," Arthur said into the receiver, his voice low. The Sheikh didn't buy it. "Why?" a distorted voice asked on the other end. "A waitress," Arthur spat. "Some nobody girl named Sarah Jenkins. She spotted the linguistic error. She knows Arabic." There was a long silence on the line. "That is unfortunate," the voice said. "The investors are not happy, Arthur. We spent $5 million forging that book. We expected a 4,000% return." "I can fix it," Arthur pleaded. "I just need bail, and I need the girl handled. If she testifies, I'm done. And if I'm done, I talk. I tell the feds about the other deals, the statues in Rome, the diamonds in Zurich." "Are you threatening us, Arthur?" "I'm negotiating," Arthur said, sweating. "Take care of the girl. Scare her. Or worse. Just make sure she doesn't show up to the DA's office." "Consider it done," the voice said. "But Arthur, if you fail again, there won't be a cell waiting for you. There will be a box." The line went dead. The next morning, Sarah woke up feeling lighter than air. She put on her best outfit, a simple grey blazer and black slacks she usually saved for interviews. She grabbed her bag and headed out the door. She stepped out onto the sidewalk. It was a sunny day in Queens. She walked toward the subway station, deciding to save the cab fare until she actually signed the contract. She was waiting on the platform. The station was crowded. The rumble of the approaching train vibrated through the floor. Sarah stood near the edge, looking down the dark tunnel for the lights of the R train. Suddenly, she felt a heavy shove from behind. It wasn't a bump. It was a deliberate, violent push. Sarah flew forward. Her feet left the platform. She saw the metal tracks below her, the trash, the dark water. She heard the screech of the incoming train, the horn blasting. She screamed, flailing her arms, trying to grab onto anything, a coat, a pole, empty air. A hand grabbed the back of her blazer. She was yanked back so hard, she fell onto the dirty concrete platform, scraping her knees. The train roared past, a blur of silver and noise, the wind whipping her hair across her face, inches from where her head had been a second ago. "Watch it, lady!" someone yelled. Sarah gasped for air, her heart hammering like a trapped bird. She scrambled up, looking around wildly. "Who pushed me?" she cried out. "Someone pushed me." The crowd was looking at her like she was crazy. People were rushing onto the train, ignoring her. But then she saw him. A man in a green hooded sweatshirt, moving against the flow of the crowd, heading toward the exit. He turned back for a split second. He wasn't looking at the train. He was looking at her to see if she was dead. Sarah froze. The look in his eyes was cold, professional. She wasn't safe. Arthur Harrington wasn't just a scammer. He was connected to something much darker. She grabbed her phone to call the Sheikh, but her hands were shaking so badly she dropped it. As she bent to pick it up, a shadow fell over her. "Miss Jenkins?" She looked up. A tall woman with icy blonde hair and a sharp business suit was standing there. She didn't look like a commuter. She looked like a shark in human skin. "Who are you?" Sarah whispered. "I'm Lydia," the woman said. Not knowing the name was forbidden, Sarah thought of her as the woman in the suit. "I work for Mr. Harrington's associates. We have a proposition for you." "I'm calling the police," Sarah said, backing away. "You could," the woman said, smiling a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But the police can't stop a subway accident, or a gas leak in your apartment, or problems with your mother's medical care." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Leave my mother out of this." "Here is the deal," the woman said, holding out an envelope. "Inside is $10,000 cash. You take it. You skip your meeting with the Sheikh. You leave New York today. You never mention the book again. You disappear. And if I don't?" "The next time," the woman whispered, leaning in close. "No one grabs your jacket." Sarah looked at the envelope. $10,000. It could pay her rent. It could pay for a month of treatment for her mum. It was the easy way out. But then she remembered the Sheikh's voice. "You speak the language of poets." She remembered her father's pride in the truth. Sarah looked the woman in the eye. "No." The woman's smile vanished. "Wrong answer." She signaled to two men standing by the turnstiles. Sarah turned and ran. She didn't run toward the train. She ran up the stairs, bursting out into the sunlight. She had to get to Hudson Yards. She had to get to Karim. He was the only one powerful enough to stop this. But as she hailed a cab, she realized she was being followed. A black SUV peeled away from the curb, matching her speed. The hunt was on. The yellow taxi smelled of stale pine air freshener and anxiety. Sarah leaned forward, gripping the partition, her eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. "Can you go any faster?" she pleaded. The driver, a man named Rajiv, who had been yelling at traffic in Hindi, glanced in the mirror. "Lady, this is Midtown Manhattan at 9:30 a.m. We are moving at the speed of light, relatively speaking." "Please," Sarah said, her voice tight with terror. Someone is following me. Rajiv scoffed. Everyone is following everyone in New York. But then he looked in his side mirror. The black Chevy Suburban was there, right on their bumper. Its windows were tinted jet black, reflecting the chaotic city surrounding them. It didn't honk, it just pushed. Rajiv changed lanes violently, cutting off a delivery truck that blasted its horn. The Suburban mimicked the move perfectly, staying locked onto them like a heat-seeking missile. "Okay," Rajiv muttered, his hands tightening on the wheel. "Now I believe you." "Get me to 50 Hudson Yards," Sarah said. "The big glass tower. Please, just get me to the door." They were on 34th Street now. The traffic was a dense river of metal. The Suburban accelerated, pulling up alongside the taxi. Sarah looked out the window. The passenger window of the SUV rolled down an inch. She couldn't see a face, just the dark barrel of something metallic resting on the sill. It wasn't a gun. It was a pressurized tranquilizer pistol, the kind used by animal control, or professional kidnappers who wanted quiet acquisitions in public places. "They have a gun!" Sarah screamed, ducking below the window line. That was enough for Rajiv. He slammed on the brakes in the middle of the avenue. Tires screeched behind them, followed by the crunch of metal as a sedan rear-ended the taxi. "Out! Get out!" Rajiv yelled at Sarah. "I don't want this trouble. Get out now!" "But we're not there. Close enough. Go!" Sarah scrambled out of the taxi into the chaos of honking horns and angry drivers stepping out of their cars to inspect the damage. The Suburban had overshot them when Rajiv braked, but it was already screeching in reverse, the tires smoking against the asphalt. Sarah didn't look back. She ran. She dodged between idling cars, ignoring the shouts of commuters. The sleek, towering glass spire of 50 Hudson Yards loomed 3 blocks away. It looked like a fortress of wealth and safety. She could hear heavy footsteps behind her on the sidewalk. They weren't running. They were moving with the terrifying, measured pace of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to go. She burst through the revolving doors of the massive lobby, gasping for air. The space was cavernous, with 30-foot ceilings, polished white marble floors, and abstract art that looked like frozen explosions of chrome. It was quiet, cool, and smelled expensive. Sarah looked wild. Her hair had escaped its pins, her blazer was torn at the shoulder from the subway incident, and she was sweating profusely. She ran toward the security desk, a massive island of granite manned by 3 guards in dark suits who looked more like Secret Service agents than lobby attendants. "Help me!" Sarah panted, slamming her hands on the desk. "Please, there are men following me. They have a gun." The lead guard, a man with a jaw square enough to calibrate a level on, looked at her with skepticism. "Miss, this is a private office building. Are you an employee?" "No, I have a meeting with Sheikh Karim Al-Fayed." The guard raised an eyebrow. He looked at her disheveled appearance, then down at his appointment screen. "Name?" "Sarah. Sarah Jenkins." He scrolled slowly. Too slowly. Sarah looked over her shoulder at the revolving doors. 2 men in dark jackets entered. They stopped, scanning the lobby. One of them was the man from the subway. "He's here," Sarah whispered, backing away from the desk. "Please, you have to let me up." "I don't show a Sarah Jenkins on His Highness's schedule for this morning," the guard said coldly. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. If you have a personal dispute, deal with it outside." "You don't understand. They're going to kill me. Call the Sheikh. Tell him it's the girl from the plaza, the translator." The 2 men were walking toward her now, splitting up to flank her. "Miss, step away from the desk or I will physically remove you," the guard said, stepping out from behind the podium. Desperation took over. Sarah reached into her pocket. "Wait, I have this." She slapped the business card onto the granite. The heavy cream card stock, embossed with the gold falcon seal of the House of Al-Fayed. The guard stopped. He looked at the card, then back at Sarah. His demeanor changed instantly. That card wasn't handed out to tourists. It was a high-level clearance pass. The two pursuers were 10 feet away. "Code blue," the guard murmured into his lapel mic. "Secure the lobby lock." He grabbed Sarah's arm, but gently this time, pulling her behind the granite barrier. "Elevator bank C. Go. Now." The two pursuers realized they had lost the initiative. They started to jog toward the desk. Suddenly, 6 more security guards materialized from side alcoves, forming a human wall between Sarah and her attackers. Sarah didn't watch the confrontation. She ran to the elevator bank. The guard swiped a key card, and the doors opened instantly. She stepped in, and the doors hissed shut just as she saw the subway attacker reach into his jacket. The elevator shot upward so fast her ears popped. She was safe. For now. But when the doors opened on the 88th floor, Sarah realized she had jumped from the frying pan into the fire. The entire floor was open plan, a stunning expanse of floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. In the center was a massive glass-walled conference room. Inside the room sat Sheikh Karim at the head of a long table, surrounded by his executive team. And standing at the foot of the table, gesturing passionately at a PowerPoint presentation, was Arthur Harrington. Arthur looked impeccable. His suit was pressed, his hair perfect. He was out on bail, and he had come straight here to do damage control before Sarah could arrive. "Your Highness," Arthur was saying, his voice smooth as silk. "The incident last night was a tragic misunderstanding. Dr. Reed has a history of mental instability. He confessed to me this morning that he forged the document without my knowledge to pay off debts. I am a victim here as much as you are." Sarah stood outside the glass wall, frozen. He was lying. He was spinning the narrative, and without her there to contradict him, it sounded plausible. Arthur Harrington was a master manipulator. Karim sat silently, his face unreadable, watching Arthur perform. Then Karim looked up. His eyes looked past Arthur, through the glass wall, and locked onto Sarah. He took in her torn clothes, her pale face, her sheer exhaustion. Arthur noticed the Sheikh's distraction and turned around. When he saw Sarah, his mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. A look of pure, venomous hatred flashed across his face before he composed himself. "Ah," Arthur said, smiling tightly. "And here is the young woman in question. Perhaps she can corroborate that Dr. Reed was acting strangely." Karim stood up. The room went silent. "Let her in," Karim commanded to the guard by the door. Sarah walked into the conference room. The air conditioning felt freezing on her sweat-damp skin. She walked past the staring executives to the end of the table, facing Karim. "Sarah," Karim said softly, "you are late." Sarah's voice cracked. She cleared her throat, fighting back tears of adrenaline. "I apologize, Your Highness. I ran into some difficulties on the way." She looked at Arthur. He was glaring at her, a silent warning in his eyes. "Keep your mouth shut, girl, or you're dead." "Difficulties?" Karim asked, raising an eyebrow. Sarah looked from Arthur to Karim. She thought of the train screeching past her face. She thought of the gun in the suburban window. "This man," Sarah pointed a trembling finger at Arthur, "tried to have me killed 2 times in the last hour." A murmur went around the table. Arthur laughed. It was a loud, confident, booming laugh intended to make Sarah seem ridiculous. "Your Highness, please. This is absurd. The girl is clearly hysterical. First, she interrupts a business deal. Now she accuses me of... What? Murder plots. This is sounding more and more like a shakedown. How much is she asking for?" Karim didn't look at Arthur. He kept his eyes on Sarah. Is this true, Sarah? He's lying about the book, Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. It wasn't just Reed, Arthur knew. I heard them talking before you came into the suite last night. Arthur was threatening Reed to make the sale. Lies, Arthur bellowed, slamming his hand on the table. She's a disgruntled waitress looking for a payday. I demand you have her removed. And this morning, Sarah continued, ignoring him, a woman named Lydia offered me $10,000 to leave town and never speak to you again. When I refused, a man pushed me in front of an R train. The silence in the room was now profound. Karim slowly turned his head to look at Arthur. The Sheikh's expression hadn't changed, but the air pressure in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lydia, Karim repeated. It wasn't a question. Arthur paled slightly. I don't know any Lydia. This is fantasy. Karim pressed a button on the console built into the table. A massive screen on the far wall flickered to life. It showed a live feed from the lobby downstairs. The camera zoomed in on the two men who had chased Sarah. They were currently being held at gunpoint, face down on the marble floor by Karim's security team. My head of security tells me these men were carrying zip ties, chloroform and a loaded tranquilizer pistol, Karim said, his voice eerily calm. He also tells me their phones contain several recent calls to a burner phone found in your possession when you were arrested last night, Mr. Harrington. Arthur opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The smooth salesman facade crumbled, leaving a terrified, sweaty man underneath. Karim stood up and walked slowly around the table until he was standing inches from Arthur. You tried to steal my money. I was annoyed, Karim whispered, but then you tried to harm the woman who protected my honor. Now I am wrathful. Karim nodded to his guards. Take him, revoke his bail, and send this footage to the FBI. Tell them Mr. Harrington is ready to discuss the identity of Lydia. Arthur was dragged out of the room, kicking and screaming threats that nobody listened to anymore. Karim turned to his executives. Meeting adjourned. Get out. The room cleared in under 30 seconds, leaving only Sarah and Karim in the vast glass box high above the city. Karim walked over to a sideboard and poured a glass of water. He handed it to Sarah. His hands, she noticed, were perfectly steady. Drink, he said gently. You are safe now. Sarah took the glass, her hands shaking so hard she almost spilled it. She drank greedily. I don't understand, Sarah whispered. Why go to all this trouble? He was already out on bail. Why try to kill me over a failed deal? Karim looked out the window at the sprawling city below. Because, Sarah, it wasn't just a failed deal. Arthur Harrington is a small fish, but he swims in very dangerous waters. By exposing the forgery in the way you did, by identifying the linguistic marker, you didn't just stop a theft. You signaled to everyone watching that their entire operation is flawed. He turned back to her, his dark eyes serious. You didn't just cost someone $200 million. You embarrassed a syndicate that prides itself on being untouchable. And now, they know your face. The syndicate? Sarah asked, the water turning cold in her stomach. I thought it was just Arthur and a crooked professor. Karim shook his head. He pressed another button on his desk console. The glass walls of the conference room instantly turned opaque, frosted white for privacy. Another section of the wall slid open to reveal an elevator she hadn't noticed before. A private, internal lift. Come with me, Karim said. They stepped into the elevator. There were no buttons. Karim placed his palm on a scanner, and the lift began to descend rapidly. Arthur Harrington is a broker, Karim explained as they dropped. He finds buyers for high-end forgeries, but he doesn't create them, and he certainly doesn't finance the operation. The people behind this, They are the reason I have spent the last decade building the best private intelligence network money can buy. The elevator doors opened. They weren't in a basement. They were in a subterranean bunker beneath Hudson Yards, a space that looked like a cross between a NASA control room and a high-end library. One wall was covered in screens displaying scrolling data, stock market tickers, satellite weather feeds, news channels from Al Jazeera to BBC. The other walls were lined with ancient texts inside climate-controlled glass cases. Half a dozen analysts sat at terminals, typing furiously. They all stood up when Karim entered. "Sit," Karim commanded. He led Sarah to a large central table covered in touch-screen interfaces. A woman in her late 40s with sharp features and a severe bob haircut approached them. "Your Highness," she said, nodding curtly. "Sarah, this is Elias. She runs my information network. Elias, this is Sarah Jenkins, the one who spotted the Istiklal error." Elias looked Sarah up and down, her eyes calculating. "Impressive catch for a civilian. You have good instincts to survive the extraction team they sent." "Extraction team?" Sarah asked weakly. "Kidnappers," Elias clarified dryly. She tapped the table surface. Photos appeared on the screen. They were high-resolution images of the fake treaty from the night before. "We scanned the document before the FBI took it into evidence," Karim said. "I wanted to know how they fooled the carbon dating." "They didn't," Elias said, zooming in on the vellum. "The animal hide is genuinely from the 13th century. They likely scraped clean an old, worthless monastic accounting book to get the blank pages. The ink is a modern chemical recreation of medieval iron gall ink, but aged artificially with UV radiation." "It's brilliant work," Sarah murmured, her scholar's brain momentarily overriding her fear. "The calligraphy style is almost perfect for the Nasrid court." "Almost," Karim said. "Except for that one word you found. Istiklal." He looked at Elias. "Why did they make that mistake? If they are this good, why use a modern word in the preamble?" Elias swiped the screen. The image of the Arabic text enlarged. "We ran it through our cryptology database," Elias said. "It wasn't a mistake, Your Highness. It was a signature." "A signature?" Sarah asked. "High-level forgers often leave deliberate, minute errors in their work," Elias explained. "It serves two purposes. First, if they get caught by their own clients, they can claim it was an honest error to avoid being killed for incompetence. Second, and more importantly, it acts as a marker for other members of their organization." Elias highlighted the word Istiklal. "Look at the numerical value of the letters in the Abjad system," Sarah said suddenly, leaning over the table. She had studied this. Ancient Semitic languages often used letters as numbers. Karim looked at her, impressed again. "Go on." Sarah quickly calculated in her head. "Alif is 1, Sin is 60, Ta is 400, Kaf is 100, Lam is 30, Alif is 1, Lam is 30, total is 622. Elias nodded slowly. "Exactly, 622. "What does that mean?" Karim asked. Elias swiped the screen again. A map of Europe appeared. A bright red dot illuminated a location in Geneva, Switzerland. "Geneva Freeport," Elias said. "One of the most secure storage facilities on Earth for high-value art and assets. Tax-free, high privacy. It's where billionaires park their wealth in the form of Picassos and gold bars, so governments can't touch it." "Storage Unit 622, Karim deduced, his voice hardening. "It is owned by a shell company registered in Panama, which traces back to a trust in Liechtenstein," Elias said. "We're still digging, but the breadcrumbs lead back to a name that has popped up on Interpol's radar for years. The Brokerate." "I've heard rumors," Karim said, crossing his arms. "A shadow organization that facilitates the sale of blood antiquities from war zones like Syria and Iraq, using forgeries to mix them into legitimate markets. They use the profits to fund undesirable elements. Sarah felt sick. You mean terrorists? Terrorists, warlords, rogue intelligence agencies looking for off-the-books funding, Karim said. $200 million can buy a lot of misery, Sarah. He turned to her. That is why they tried to kill you. You didn't just stop a scam. You pointed a spotlight directly at a marker that leads to their central bank. The weight of it crushed Sarah. Yesterday, her biggest problem was a $400 rent deficit. Today, she was the target of an international terrorist financing ring. What do I do? She whispered. I can't go home. They know where I live. You are correct. You cannot go home, Karim said firmly. Your apartment is already burned. Your life as Sarah Jenkins, the waitress, is over. He stepped closer to her. His presence was overwhelming. Power, money, and a strange, fierce protectiveness that she didn't know how to process. You work for me now, Sarah. Really work for me. Not just reviewing documents. What do you mean? Elias and I are going to burn the broker rate down, Karim said, his eyes glittering with a cold fire. We are going to expose them, bankrupt them, and send the files to every agency from the Mossad to the CIA. He gestured to the fake treaty on the screen. But to do that, we need to understand their language. We need someone who can see the patterns in history that others miss. Someone brave enough to stand in a room of powerful men and call them liars. He held out his hand. Join us, Sarah. Help me hunt them down. I will protect your mother. She will have the best doctors in the world starting today. I will clear your debts. You will live in one of my secure properties. But in return, I need your mind. Sarah looked at his hand. It was a deal with a devil, or perhaps a guardian angel. She looked at the screen, at the intricate lies woven into the beautiful script. These people had corrupted the history she loved to fund violence. They had threatened her life. She thought of her father, the historian, who died penniless because he wouldn't compromise his ethics. Sarah took Karim's hand. His grip was firm, solid. When do we start? She asked. Karim smiled, a grim, determined look. Right now. Elias, book the jet. We are going to Geneva. Elias nodded and turned to her console. Suddenly, the lights in the bunker turned red. A siren whooped once, sharp and loud. Elias's fingers flew across her keyboard. Her face paled. Your Highness, she said, her voice tight. We have a problem. What is it? A priority message just came through on the secure server. It bypassed our firewalls. It's not from any known agency. Elias put the message on the main screen. It was just text, black letters on a red background. We know you have the girl, Karim. Release her to us by midnight, or the cancer ward at St. Jude's Hospital in Queens, where her mother is currently receiving chemo, will experience a catastrophic gas leak. Sarah screamed. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Karim hadn't caught her. Mum, she choked out. They have my mum. Karim stared at the screen, his face turning into a mask of absolute fury. The lion had been provoked. Elias! Karim growled, his voice vibrating with rage. Get the tactical team to that hospital. Now, lock it down. Nobody in, nobody out. And find out where that signal came from. He pulled Sarah upright, holding her shoulders tightly. They made a mistake, Karim said to her, his eyes blazing into hers. They threatened my family. Now, they threatened yours. There will be no mercy. The helicopter touched down on the roof of St. Jude's Hospital. Sarah and Karim sprinted through the secured corridors to the oncology ward. Inside room 404, the nightmare was waiting. A woman disguised as a nurse stood over Sarah's frail mother, a syringe hovering dangerously close to her IV port. "One step closer, and her heart stops," the assassin sneered. She revealed her demand. Sarah must live-stream a confession validating the fake manuscript, so the brokerate could secure a new buyer immediately. "Do it," the assassin commanded, "or say goodbye to Mummy." Sarah held up her phone, feigning compliance. But her historian's eye caught a detail the assassin missed. The nurse was wearing red-soled Louboutin sneakers. "I need to tell the world," Sarah said to the camera, shifting to Arabic, "that Al-Jahil, the ignorant one, is in the room." The assassin frowned, confused by the language switch. "Speak English." Sarah used that split second of confusion. She hurled her phone at the metal IV stand. Clang! Startled, the assassin flinched. The window exploded inward as Miller, Karim's head of security, rappelled through the glass, tackling the woman to the floor. Karim lunged forward, ripping the IV line from the bag before the poison could enter the vein. Martha was safe. As Sarah hugged her mother, weeping with relief, the pieces clicked into place. The assassin wanted the book validated now, because a sale was happening tonight. The Met Gala, Sarah realized, wiping her tears. Her fear hardened into resolve. She looked at Karim. "We're going to that party, and we're going to burn them down." The Metropolitan Museum of Art shimmered with wealth. In the shadow of the Temple of Denda, Lydia stood confidently with the architect, finalizing the illegal sale of the forged manuscript to a Russian oligarch. She believed the problem, Sarah, had been eliminated. But then, a hush swept through the gala. Descending the grand staircase was Sheikh Karim, looking regal in a tuxedo. On his arm was not a victim, but a vision of power. Sarah had traded her waitress uniform for midnight, blue velvet and sapphires. She didn't look like help. She looked like a queen. Karim took the stage, cutting the music. "Forgive the interruption," he announced, his voice booming. "Tonight, a crime is disguised as commerce." Behind him, the massive screens shifted. They didn't show art. They displayed high-resolution surveillance photos of Lydia entering the secret vault in Geneva, followed by bank transfers linking the brokerate to known warlords. The room erupted in gasps. Lydia turned to run, but the doors were blocked by FBI agents, led by Elias. Sarah stepped to the microphone, her voice steady and clear. She locked eyes with the woman who had threatened her mother. "History is not for sale," Sarah declared to the room of billionaires, "and neither is the truth." As handcuffs clicked onto Lydia's wrists, Sarah whispered, "Checkmate." 3 months later, the sun set over the Persian Gulf in Dubai. Sarah sat on a palace balcony, finishing a video call with her mother, who was fully in remission thanks to top-tier care. Karim joined her, placing a cup of tea on the table. He took her hand, his dark eyes full of warmth. "You saved my fortune, Sarah," he said softly. "But I think you saved me too." Sarah squeezed his hand, looking out at the horizon. The invisible waitress was gone. In her place was a woman loved, respected, and ready for her next chapter. The story of Sarah Jenkins reminds us that true power doesn't come from a bank account, but from integrity, intelligence, and the courage to speak up when everyone else stays silent. From a waitress ignored by the elite to the woman who brought down an international crime syndicate, Sarah proved that you should never judge a book or a person by their cover. She saved the Sheikh from a $200 million scam, but in the end, he saved her from a life of struggle. It's the ultimate karmic justice. The arrogant scammers are in prison, and the honest waitress is living a life she could only dream of. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of drama, romance, and justice, please give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a story. If you were Sarah, would you have taken the $10,000 bribe at the subway station? Or would you have risked it all for the truth? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.